Hello and welcome to part 3 of lesson number 3 in Unit 0 Algebraic Tools in our grade 11 University College Math class. This is factoring part 2, factoring by grouping, and tricky trinomials. So in the first two parts of this video we did factoring by grouping and we learned how to factor tricky trinomials using a little bit of factoring by grouping as part of our process. We're not going to do any recap, we're just going to jump right in. If you need to rewatch video number 2 for the tricky trinomials, please do so. Let's jump right in here with example C. So what you'll notice again is this is a tricky trinomial. We have a coefficient out front that is not 1, it is 6. However, as we look down the line, we'll notice that there actually is a common factor that we can factor out of this before we start. And the greatest common factor in this whole thing is going to be 3, which is going to leave us with 3 terms in this trinomial. It'll leave us with 2w squared minus 5w minus 3. And again, I want to point out that even after we've common factored, we still in the brackets have a tricky trinomial. We have a coefficient of 2 in front of our squared term, and there's our minus 3. So what we want to do is we want to find the two integers that multiply to a and c, so that's 2 and negative 3. That's going to be negative 6. So the two numbers that multiply to negative 6, but which when we add them, give us a negative 5. So I've included this one because it's a little bit tricky. Your tendency is going to be to go with 3 and 2 here. However, a positive 2 and a negative 3 when combined don't give us our negative 5, nor does a negative 2 and a positive 3. We end up with plus 1 or minus 1 respectively. So using 2 and negative 3 or negative 2 and positive 3 won't work. The actual pairing that we want here is negative 6 and a plus 1. Multiply those together, you get negative 6. Add them together or combine them and you get negative 5. So those are the two terms that we want to decompose negative 5 into. So just a quick note on form here, that 3 that we've common factored out, it has to travel down our work with us. It can't just be abandoned. It's not gone, it's just been sort of moved to the front. So there we have our 2w squared, there's our minus 3, and now we're going to decompose this down into minus 6w and plus 1w. And again, I said it in the last video, the order of those middle terms that we've decomposed isn't important. We could have put plus 1w minus 6w. It really doesn't matter. So now we are going to common factor by, or we're going to factor by grouping by common factoring the first two terms in our bracket. So we have a 3. Our greatest common factor in 2w squared minus 6w is 2w. And when we common factor that out, we'll be left with w minus 3. And now we're going to common factor the second two terms in our factoring by grouping. Again, there's nothing in common except a plus 1, so we'll pop that in, and then we're going to be left with w minus 3. You'll notice I've introduced sort of a second bracket here. That's just for clarity. So now we have two terms, the 2w times w minus 3 and the 1 times w minus 3. The greatest common factor in here is w minus 3, so let's factor that out front. And when we have factored that out, we'll be left with two terms. The first is 2w, and the second is plus 1. And there you go. That is our factoring a tricky trinomial using a little bit of factoring by grouping. If you didn't common factor that 3 out at the beginning, it would become something that you would have to factor out at the end. You wouldn't get a wrong answer. It would just sort of relocate the time where you have to do your common factoring from the very beginning to the very, like the second last step. So again, I like to get it out of the way when I notice it right off the bat. If I missed it, there's nothing wrong with that. I would just have to catch it in that last step so that my answer is fully factored rather than almost but not quite fully factored. All right, let's try one more example here. We have 12x squared plus 5x minus 3. This is a tricky trinomial. There are no common factors that I can see. So we are going to look for the thing that multiplies to AC, and that's going to be 12 times negative 3. So we're looking for the thing that multiplies to negative 36, but which when added together gives us a plus 5. So again, we have a negative product and a positive add in the middle, so we're going to have one negative number and one positive number. And we want the positive number to be larger because when we combine them, we end up with a positive value here. So it looks like negative 9 and positive 4 will get the job done for us. Oh, sorry, that's just it's the opposite of what I just said. This should be positive 9 and negative 4. There we go. The larger number is positive. Had we done it the other way, we would have ended up with a negative 5 here, which just doesn't match what we were given. So there are our two integers. Let's decompose our middle term here. So we have 12x squared. There's our minus 3. And now we're going to decompose plus 5x down into plus 9x minus 4x. And now we're going to do some factoring by grouping. We're going to start by finding the common factor in 12x squared plus 9x. That's going to be 3x's, leaving us with 4x plus 3. And then in our second pair, in our factoring by grouping, again we have that negative term here leading, so we're going to factor out a negative 1. That's all that's common, leaving us with 4x plus 3. We've got two terms left. The greatest common factor is that binomial, 4x plus 3. We're going to common factor that out, and we are left with then two terms. The first is 3x, and the second is minus 1. And again, we have a little bit of time here, so I'm just going to expand this out just as a proof or a check that we've done this correctly. This is extra, but if you have some time, why not? That way you'll know you've done it correctly. We have 4x times 3x gives us 12x squared. We have 4x times minus 1, which is minus 4x. We have 3 times 3x, which is plus 9x. And plus 3 times minus 1 is minus 3. Combine our like terms, gives us 5x, and there's the minus 3. Is that what we started with? It is, and not only that, but again, I want to point out one more time, these two values we get when we expand it out, those are the same two values that we figured out would meet the criteria for multiplying to a and c, or a times c, and adding to the b value. So there you go. That is tricky trinomial factoring. Hopefully that makes sense. This is a challenging concept. If you have any trouble, please reach out, email me, join in our classroom video chat that's open every day that we have a class. Or if you're in the classroom, you can come see me in person. Make sure that you get this technique down. We're going to need this as we move forward into quadratics. So good luck with the homework, and we'll see you in lesson number 4.